Welcome back, I am Moreland and this is part 2 of my BDO 2018 trading guide. If you accidentally skipped part 1 where we talk about what trading is and how it works, go ahead and click the link on the screen to be taken there now. As always, this video will have a timestamped table of contents in the description for your convenience. Let's go ahead and get started. Now that we understand how trading works, let's talk about whether or not it's actually worth it for you to level trading up based on what you do in the game. If you're somebody who spends a lot of time actively fishing, not AFK fishing, but actively fishing, or if you're someone who grinds a lot of Pirate Island, then it's almost certainly worth it for you to level up your trading to Artisan 2, so that you can get that 50% bonus on your fish or your pirate coins. However, I'm suspecting that most of you are going to fall into the third category, which is people who are trying to get into trading because of crates. There are a lot of older guides that say that trade crates is the best money-making technique in the game, and at one point a long time ago that is true. However, the game has changed a lot since then, and in order to demonstrate how this is no longer true, let's take a look at bronze ingots as an example. So right now, if you have Artisan 2 trading, and you make a bronze crate in Grana, which is the furthest away you can make it from Valencia, so in other words, the most money you could possibly make from a bronze crate. If you were to take that crate all the way from Grana over to Valencia with these current prices, you would only make about 1,000 silver per crate. And as you can see, there's not a whole lot for sale with 11,300. These will probably get bought out pretty soon, so you'd probably actually have to pay more like 11,400 or maybe even 11,700. And if you were paying this much, you'd be making 0 silver per crate. If you're paying this much, you'd be making about negative 3,000 silver per crate. So very quickly, the prices of these materials will push out people who only have Artisan 2 trading. And the reason for this is simple. There are people in the game right now who have Master 16, Master 20. I think Biohack is up to Master 25 trading now. And when your trading skill is so much higher, you can price everyone else out of the markets and basically buy all the resources and continue your own profit and continue to level your own trade skill, while people with lower trade skills cannot afford to do that and have to rely on their processing skill only. So basically, to simplify this, what I'm trying to say is you cannot buy materials off the market with Artisan 2 trading and expect to make money. However, you can still use Artisan 2 trading as a bonus to the profit you make from your own processing time. Now, this is the part of the guide that's going to get pretty complicated, and I'm going to be condensing about a 2-hour discussion into like a 15-minute simplification. So we're going to be going through some numbers here, and things are going to get a little complicated. If you're not completely following what I'm saying, then just try to stick with it, and I'll try to summarize these things at the end of each point. But before we even get into that, I will say right off the bat that if this is too much math for you, just keep in mind the alternative to this is that you can just sell your materials to the market. Like I said, you have people like Biohack who are perfectly willing to pay good prices for your materials. You'll of course lose out on the market tax, so again, you will make a little bit more money if you turn the materials into crates, but there are a lot of other costs that go along with making crates that we're going to dive into right now. So, in order to figure out if it's worth it for you to level your trading based on how much processing you do, I have this little chart here that I'm going to bring up, and basically this is going to come down to how much overnight wait you have for processing, and it's also going to come down to how often you can refresh your character during the day while you're at work or near your computer but you're not actually playing. So real quick, let me show you guys how to acquire some more processing weight other than the cash shop. There's going to be a tab down here on the spreadsheet that you can also use as a reference that will list these pieces of gear. Let me go ahead and show you them in game. Everyone should have the 5-piece root treant accessory set. You're going to have earrings, rings, and neck. You don't want the belt. For the belt, we're going to use the Azula belts instead, which you can farm over at Elric Shrine. These 5-piece accessories you can farm from Mancha Forest. There's a different set with a different name, but it has the same effect. Or you can just buy these from the NPC Grandis in Calfian City. He's one of the blacksmiths in the northern part of the city, close to the storage keeper. For belt, like I said, you can get the Azula belt over from Elric Shrine. If you want to invest some more silver, you can get a golden Monos belt. The plus 0 or the base Monos belt is pointless because it only has 100 weight. But if you can buy yourself a Pry or a Duo belt off the market, the Pry will pay for itself in something like 3 to 4 months of overnight processing, and the Duo will pay for itself in something like 9 to 12 months. So if you are inclined to make a longer term investment into your processing weight, then you can pick that up. I personally haven't bothered to do so. I've just stuck with this basic Azula belt for the 100 weight. And then finally, for armor, everyone should have Hercules shoes and Hercules gloves. For the shoes, you want the best Historia crystals you can get your hands on. I'm just using the cheap ones right now with 20 weight, but eventually I'll upgrade these to the ones that have 50 weight. For gloves, there are strength crystals that have 15 weight, and that's it. There's not a more expensive version, so just grab those when you can. For chest, there's 2 different ways of doing this. If you have the wand Cabulinus crystals that you see here, the ones with 50 weight, then you just use the Hercules chest to complete the 3-piece set, and you don't wear any helmet at all. If you don't have wand Cabulinus crystals, it's actually a little bit better to use a Zareth chest piece instead. The Zareth chest piece has 50 weight built into it inherently, and then it has 1 crystal slot where you could put like one of the cheap Cabulinus crystals in. And if you're using a Zareth chest piece, then you just want to buy a Hercules helmet in order to complete that 3-piece with your shoes and your gloves. And the Zareth and the armor of Hercules can all be purchased off of the market. Processing is not something you should be doing with your active playtime. It's something you should only be doing AFK. And because of that, there's a few ways we can figure out how much money you're actually making from processing, and therefore how much money you would actually make from turning your processed goods into crates as well. This is pretty simple. The only 2 things that you need to worry about are this blue cell right here and this blue cell right here. So if you want to make a copy of this, if you're not familiar with Google Sheets, basically you need to download Chrome as a browser. You need to make a Gmail account and sign into Chrome, and then that will open up the option to come up here, click File, make a copy, and that will save another copy of this spreadsheet to your own Google Drive, and then you can edit it freely. You don't need to request access to mine. Obviously, that wouldn't work because then there would be thousands of people using it. So you need to make your own copy if you want to edit this. But all you need to do is come down here and type in what your processing weight is. In this case, I've put in 1,000. This will automatically tell you, on average, how many hours overnight while you're asleep you'll be able to process metal. The reason that we process metal overnight is because it is slower and lighter than processing wood. Since wood is faster and heavier, we only want to do that during the day when you can either refresh your computer because you're physically near it, or you can refresh your computer using some sort of remote control app. So if you're able to do that, then you can make some decent money from processing. I will say right off the bat, if you're not able to keep your character processing during the day, either by checking him manually or by using a remote app, right away I can tell you this is not going to be worth it. I can also tell you that if you do not have at least some cash shop weight, as well as the cash shop processing costume, I can also tell you right away that this is definitely not worth it. But if you do have some cash shop weight, and if you do have at least some ability while you're at the office to remote in and tell your guy to keep processing, then you can keep watching and we can see what exactly you need to do in order for this to break even and start becoming profitable. So I'm going to start off with a very low example of 1,000 processing weight to show you how this is definitely not going to be worth it. And the values that we're spitting out here, we'll go through these one at a time so that it's not too confusing. We already have the overnight metal processing. This is going to be computed automatically. And then you just need to figure out how many hours a day your character is going to be chopping wood, and you can use this number down here as a basis for that. So this will tell you how long your guy can chop wood before his inventory will fill up, assuming that you have the cash shop processing costume and you're processing directly out of your storage. So in this case, you can process for 1.5 hours before your guy runs out. So what I'm assuming that you're able to essentially refresh him once throughout the day. So you have your initial 1.5 hours, and then you refresh him, and you have another 1.5 hours. So I'm adding those two together. 1.5 plus 1.5 gives you a total of 3 hours that you're chopping wood. So in this example, maybe in the morning before you leave for work, you tell your guy to start chopping wood, and then halfway through your day on your lunch break, you open up your remote app and you tell him to chop wood again. And that's it. Okay, so let's see what kind of numbers we get as a result. So there are many different variables that we can analyze this across, and this is why it's sort of a longer discussion that we're trying to condense. But to go through these quickly, this is the amount of additional profit that you would be making every day if you turned your materials into crates instead of selling them on the market. So selling them on the market is still an option, but if you make them into crates instead, you'd be making this amount of additional silver every day, depending on if you had your workshops in Trent, which is this column, or if you had your workshops in Grana, which is this column. So an extra 800K or an extra 1.3 million on your plywood processing every day sounds nice, but there's some additional factors we need to break down. One of them is the cost of the workshop that it takes to create those crates in the first place. The Trent workshops are quite a bit less expensive than the workshops in Grana, so if we break down your profit per point of contribution invested, we can see that Trent is much more CP efficient than Grana, even though it's less daily profit. Now, another thing to consider is that in order to level up Artisan 2 trading to begin with, there is a cost associated, and there's two different ways to do it. We'll talk about those later, but basically the first method is going to cost you 15 to 20 hours of active, rather boring and tedious playtime, and the second method is going to cost you 150 million silver worth of raw materials. For the sake of simplicity, we're just going to treat either one of those methods as a cost of 150 million silver. Obviously, with the second method, you're literally spending 150 million. With the first method, you're spending 15 to 20 hours of your actual time in game, and I think it's reasonable to say that 15 to 20 hours of playtime is worth at least 150 million silver, if not more. So, with that in mind, we have a fixed cost of, say, 150 million silver to level your trading to Artisan 2. And since we're paying that 150 million silver up front, another variable that we can analyze is, well, how long will it take before I make my investment back? And if you have your crates being made in Trent, this is how many days it will take. If you have your crates being made in Grana, this is how many days it will take. But we're still not done. There is yet another factor that we need to analyze, and that is, well, how much money am I actually making per point of contribution when we take into account the opportunity cost of investing contribution into something else such as nodes. So in this case, we've averaged the profit, the daily profit on a node with an artisan human at about 150,000 silver per day. So every point of contribution that you invest into nodes on average is worth about 150k a day, which means if we take another look at this column here, alright, so our workshops in Trent are higher than 150,000, so in this case it's better than investing in nodes, but our workshops in Grana are actually making less money than we would make if we just scrapped trading altogether and invested our contribution into worker nodes instead, and then just sold our, copper ore or whatever we were getting from our workers directly to the market. You'd actually make more money from the nodes than you would from making crates in Grana on a daily basis. So over here we have the final column, which is how many days will it take for trading to break even if you take into account the fact that you can also spend your contribution elsewhere. And in this case, it takes way too long, 190 days for wood and 300 days for metal for these workbenches to pay off. And it never pays off in Grana. The negative number means that it actually never pays off and that we're better off spending our contribution on nodes than we are making benches in Grana. So in this example, it's pretty clear, I think, that if you only have 1,000 processing weights, then, like I said at the beginning, it is just not going to be worth it for you to invest into trading. So if you're comfortable with how this spreadsheet works, you can go ahead and just plug in your own details and figure that out and go on to the next part of the guide. If not, I am going to do two more brief examples. One is going to be kind of a moderate example of someone who maybe should level trading and maybe not. We'll talk about why that is. And then finally, we'll do an example of someone who definitely does do enough processing to where leveling trading would be worth it. So let's do the medium example for now. Let's put in 1600 processing weight, and let's bump the hours of chopping wood per day up to, say, 8. So in this case, We're looking at someone who's maybe a student, or maybe at their work they're able to freely tab in and refresh their guy from chopping wood whenever they need to, and because of that they have more flexibility and they can keep their guy at home chopping wood basically all day long. Now this hours before refreshing wood over here goes up to 2.4. If you're able to get to your wood chopper before this time is up, then you want to make sure you're actually using a silver embroidered craftsman clothes instead of max weight. Obviously, if you're going to be fully AFK and your character is going to be hitting his max weight, then it's important to have all of your max weight armor on so that you can get the most time processed, or the most materials processed possible. But if you can refresh it before he hits his max weight, then you should use a silver embroidered clothes instead, because that will get you more material in less amount of time and get you more materials overall. As long as you can refresh it before he maxes out on weight, then you should get one of these costumes, and you should get at least a +2, if not a +3. Alright, so back to the chart here. Just a little bit more information about how I arrived at these numbers. I've basically, for plywood, I've averaged all the different crates together. So your Calfian, your Medea, your Balanos. I've taken all those and looked at the extra profit that you're making from trading instead of just selling the plywood directly to the markets. And I've averaged that together based on whether or not you're making the crates in Trent or Grana. So if you're looking at the numbers in your own version and you're wondering, what does this 440k mean? That's basically where it comes from. It comes from an average of all the different plywood crates that you're likely to make. And same thing with ingots. This is just a average of the processing that you do for steel, brass, bronze, and all the subcomponents that are built into those as well. Alright, so moving down the column here, we can see that the profit per CP in Trent is really, really high. So for someone who only has 1600 weight with this particular setup, at least making crates in Trent seems to be very, very good. Making them in Grana it's tough. The numbers that we see here for the mineral workbench in Grana are still less than what you would make just from putting your contribution into nodes instead. And with 1600 weights, it's debatable whether or not you even should be processing metal overnight. Maybe you could be doing something like fishing for relics instead. It kind of just depends on the markets of whatever region you're in. But at least the Trent workshops look very nice, and the wood workbench in Grana looks pretty good as well. 320k is a bit on the low end here. And the reason I say this is on the low end, again, we're trying to beat 150k per CP, but we don't want to beat it by just a little bit. We want to beat 150k by a lot. And 320, I would say, is right in the range where it starts to be worth it. 300 or 350 or higher is really what we want to aim for here. And the reason for that is because nodes are much less work than crates. So even though a node is only making 150k silver per CP, with nodes, you don't have to worry about acquiring blackstone powder for your crates, which can be a huge pain, especially if the typical weapon stones or magic crystals that you're going to use to grind blackstone powder off of the market are sold out. Then sometimes blackstone powder can take forever to acquire. Also, you have to worry about stacking your crates on a horse and moving them out to Valencia. We'll go over that process later, but basically there is going to be a active playtime cost associated with trading that is not associated with just putting your CP into nodes. So again, we don't want to beat 150k just by a little bit here. We want to beat it by a lot so that all the additional effort that we're putting into this actually ends up being worth it. And in this case, it almost comes down to player preference. If with 1600 weight and with this much free time to process, if you actually want to level trading, you may still, in this case, just be better off selling your materials to the market and saving your contribution and putting it towards other things. If you do get into trading here, I would say Trent is probably a better investment than Grana. If we look at and see how many days it takes to break even, there is something interesting that happens over here, at least with the wood workbench. You actually break even on your investment. Even when compared to nodes, you break even on it in Grana a little bit faster than you do in Trent. And that's because even though Trent is much more CP efficient, you're getting that additional profit on 11 points of CP here instead of just 3 points of CP in Trent. So even with less CP efficiency in Grana, there does come a time where it's actually worth it to take the hit in terms of efficiency in order to make up for that with the increased volume of the amount of contribution that you have spent. So hopefully some of this is making sense. All right, let's look through one more example of someone who definitely should be leveling trading. And let's say in this case you just have an insane amount of processing weight, and maybe you're able to refresh your guy as often as you want. So let's even give ourselves an extra free hour here because we're using those silver embroidered clothes instead of max weight clothes. And in this case, the numbers start to look much nicer. The CP efficiency in Trent is absolutely insane. The additional profit per day in Grana is very nice. The wood workbench starts to look really good. The mineral workbench in Grana is still kind of something that you got to decide if it's actually going to be worth it or not. You know, processing those metals overnight, even with a ton of weight like this, even if you're getting 7 to 8 hours of metal overnight, that CP investment in Grana is just so steep that the mineral workbench is, unless you can find tricky ways to min-max your processing, which we can't go into here because that would be a whole nother guide, then it's up to you if this is really going to be worth it. But the wood workbench, if you're processing wood for 9 hours a day, then either one of the wood workbenches looks really good. You just have to decide for yourself if there's more important things that you'd rather spend your CP on, or if you'd rather take the hit to your CP efficiency and put your crates in Grana instead. Alright, well, you made it through the toughest part of the guide, and if you've decided to stick with it, then click the link for the third and final part of the guide, which will discuss leveling up trading and how to properly turn in crates. If you found this video to be useful and you want to support my effort to make more of these, there's also a link on the screen that will take you to a store where I am selling some original merch. So thanks for checking that out, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.